but because I'm self-employed, it's money for money. It's something, to like, okay, swing, And once I'm working there, then I go through the programming class.
Is that a Lichtenberg piece? Can I take a look at it? Oh, this is awesome. You guys should see this. This guy has electrocuted this board after soaking it in electrolyte, and it makes these beautiful tree-like patterns. They're just absolutely amazing. That's a nice one. This is made to look like a state?
Yep, state of New Mexico.
New Mexico. Nice. And you can do this with a transformer from an old microwave.
I'm impressed you know what it is. Most people have no idea.
It's a whole trend on a little niche part of YouTube that I call Guy in Shop.
Well, I've chased lightning my whole life, so this is just another version of lightning.
And there's a whole discipline of mathematics that describes how this happens.
Wow.
It's called a fractal.
I've been wanting to use, and you might try this, if you have a YouTube channel, I'd love to exchange information. Use copper sulfate as your electrolyte and see what happens.
I haven't tried with copper sulfate, albeit my electrodes. I'm using copper.
Yeah.
And it transmits the copper into the wood.
Oh,
so
okay.
this is done, it turns green.
Neat. What are you using to soak the board?
A mixture of borax, baking soda, and salt. And I've been playing with the ratios.
To get just the right...
To get the fine fingering.
I was watching one YouTube video where the guy was developing how to paint part of the board with the electrolyte so he can steer the pattern around.
So far I haven't had any luck with that. I guess my voltage is too high.
Do you always use plywood or do you use different things?
I have found this burns the best.
I'm real interested in Osage orange.
That'd be interesting.
For like tool handles and things like that. It's real hard to get Osage orange in any lengths because it's so hard.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
Cool.
That's an awesome piece of work.
Thank you.
It makes me think of like
Yeah, look up Lichtenberg on YouTube. It's really cool stuff. I study YouTube.
Same.
I think the interesting thing about YouTube is if you watch it long enough trying to get different information, you start ending up learning about YouTube itself. And if you look up certain things, then the algorithm chooses to show you stuff that other people who looked for the same thing and they also looked for, right? There's an also look for function in the algorithm. You can tell by the verbiage and what comes up. So if you keep changing the search inputs, and if you delete your search history or you open up different accounts and search for things in differential, you start finding that there's these branches, just like that Lichtenberg stuff. You'll find one branch goes over here and there's no connection. You look for this stuff, you never find this stuff. Unless you start searching for something that's in this little bubble. And the trick is to get out of the bubble that Google puts you into. Because Google sends you to the popular and to the associated. But what I'm looking for is the unique, which actually Google prevents you from finding unique material. Google's algorithm forces you to find things that are similar to what you've already found or similar to what someone else found in the same bubble.
Yeah, that's the same.
Giving you Walmart. You want to be like the
But there's, and I forget which organ it is in the brain, but it's in the center of the brain, the size of a pea, and it triggers whenever you find something unique. You get a dose of endorphins.
Yeah.
And really, I'd love to get a hold of Google, sometimes to strangle the little shits for cutting me off of my own account for like the 4th time. And sometimes to tell them, look, you try to, leverage the algorithm so that you move people around the data sphere more, so they see unique and new things they've never seen before. And it's interesting, you look in the comments, one of the things that happens, because I start looking to break those algorithm spheres, the people who end up looking for the stuff that I'm always looking for in their sphere, they start seeing stuff that shows up in their search that comes from my other searches, and the comment says, why am I seeing this? They're seeing something unique and they're not used to it, and they're kind of uncomfortable with that. And I think that's cool. You know?
Yeah, I mean, then people can expand their bubble and like their awareness. And
You have to have something I learned from being in Southeast Kansas when a really minor tornado didn't quite shut down or come down on the Nixon family farm, which is like some cousins of mine in the Marchand family. We had a big black walnut tree fall over because it didn't have enough root base. The roots were all on the surface and they didn't go very far because there's plenty of water. If your base is not deep and broad, intellectually, physically, the way you build a building doesn't matter. Then the forces of the rest of that environment have leverage to destabilize whatever your structure is. And it falls over. You look intellectually, the weakest crowd in the whole world is that crowd that we call the geniuses, the computer engineers, the algorithm writers. These are the guys who have a very narrow base. You can tell by Wikipedia, the statistics on who writes Wikipedia pages. It's real interesting. A wiki, right, is invented by computer programmers, by and for computer programmers. And they're easy for computer programmers. They're really hard for seniors, and they're really hard for anybody that doesn't code. If you look at Wikipedia's articles on John Deere tractors or Caterpillar tractors, you see a whole bunch of stub articles because computer programmers don't know anything about Caterpillar tractors. You look up mathematicians, man, you've got an article with every little detail of their life and all their theories and all the stuff written out in all those symbols you have to go to special, Unicode to put in. They're 35 to 40 years old. They're male. They've never been married and they have no kids. That's the vast majority of Wikipedia writers. And they're anti-religious. And they're anti-natalist. They don't want children to be born because they're afraid of the overpopulation myth, which is ironic because they're some of the best mathematicians in the world, but they're emotionally afraid of too many people, and they won't do the math on figuring out that the more people we birth each year, the better off we live, and the more problems we're able to solve. But they can't go to that math because it would challenge all the rest of their thinking. And I find it really interesting that I figured all that out and I'm lousy at math and can't program.
that is interesting, yeah. I mean, lots of like little details.
Well, here's why I figured it out. I was born in 1969, in January, just a few months before we landed on the moon. By the time I was aware of my surroundings, the Zenith console TV that was like this big when I was a kid, and this deep, and that tall, and warm on top, and the cat would sleep on top with his head upside down watching the cat food commercials. Meow Mix, I'm telling you, it was meow, 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 and the cat would be like upside down watching the TV for an hour, and I'm like, how can you're I don't know. But the talking heads told me that what happened the year I was born was critical to humanity itself. And it like clicked in some weird way, and I got obsessive. And I studied everything about space. But I was never in that clique that was allowed to study and work in that box that became NASA and the computer industry and, you know, the preppy kids. I was never allowed in that circle. But I was obsessed about the subject. So I saw that cube and all the mistakes they made. And they can't see it because they're inside the box. They're too close to themselves. It's like have you ever heard of a USB microscope?
I've heard about it.
They're like $100. You plug it into your laptop and you can see 200 times magnification. If you look at your own skin, it's super greasy and gross looking. No matter how much you clean, it's like, don't look at your skin unless you're like morbid or something. It's really gruesome. But when you look at stuff, you can't tell what it is because you're too close. If you're in the NASA box, all your assumptions are completely obvious to people who don't fit that demographic that was allowed to become the NASA intellectualists. And now I can't figure out how to publish what I figured out about space. How it's really easy, it's amazingly profitable. We are not only not overpopulated, we really need to like have lots of stable marriages and lots of babies. And we need to raise those children to take care of their parents instead of having people who've never had kids expect that their retirement will protect them when they become 80 and senile. Because senior care centers suck ass.
Yeah, I think there's been a huge trend from what I had seen with, I guess, the different age groups now starting to work and having careers, having less kids. I've seen that the population pyramid is kind of shifted.
Yeah.
It's become
From
a
the
mushroom
60s
cloud of
stuff. Yeah.
potential disaster. There's this thing that I figured out. Excuse my eating the banana. I'm like low blood sugar, and drinking coffee at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna click this thing.